I am Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen. I am your host of Merriwether's World. Among other things, author of The Idiot's Guide Foraging, creator of Foraging Texas website, and dad of the amazing Merriwether, who will be doing all the important stuff as usual. Tonight's episode, we will be looking at wild plants that work as insect repellents. There's a lot of information out there, so we're going to go through and look at some. We'll be talking about what attracts mosquitoes and then what repels them. Quick word, shout out to the sponsors. Whoops, Uncommon Bees. I always get this wrong. So they are my number one supplier of bee and bee related products, from honey to wax to propolis to all that sort of thing. They have a huge line of stuff available through their online store. They're also at a bunch of the different farmers markets around Houston. So, Merriwether's World, episode 26, plant-based mosquito repellents. What we're going to look at is quickly what attracts mosquitoes, because that in itself, there's some interesting science and some things that will help you out there. Because the less attractive you are to mosquitoes, the easier it is to find a repellent that helps, finish the job and keep them away. We'll talk some about Deet. That is pretty much the gold standard for mosquito repellents as far as effectiveness. And so we'll talk a little bit about the science and why it works and some of the concerns and cautions about it. Then we will look at wild plant repellents. So the different wild plants that grow around Texas. Actually, most of these grow all over the country. So this isn't just a Texas-based show tonight. Even though all the plants are located in Texas, most of them are also found elsewhere. And if we have time, we'll also discuss some of the commercial plant-based repellents, just to kind of clue you in on those. So I'm trying not to screw this up. Okay, so what attracts mosquitoes? Well, mosquitoes, if you remember, they have these little antennas on the front, and these antennae have chemical receptors that are tied into a bunch of different chemicals. So you may see here, I have a picture of beer and pizza, because beer and pizza pretty much sums up what attracts mosquitoes. So first off, carbon dioxide, the exhalation of mammals, or well, really any animal, exhaling carbon dioxide. That's one of the main attractants, because people are surrounded by a cloud of carbon dioxide. Mammals in general are surrounded by a cloud of carbon dioxide that they exhale, and it usually there's a trail behind them of this gas. And so mosquitoes will, can trace that trail and find, ooh, the carbon dioxide is increasing. I must be getting closer and closer to my victim. So carbon dioxide is one of the primary attractants of mosquitoes. If you don't breathe, if you're a vampire or a robot, I guess you don't have to worry about it, but most humans, they are still exhaling carbon dioxide, and so it is a problem. Next are a class of chemicals called carboxylic acids. It's a mixture of different molecules, but a good way of thinking of carboxylic acids is stinky cheese. A number of the Gorgonzola, Limburger, some of the more fragrant cheeses, those particular odors are due to a class of chemical called carboxylic acids. Mozzarella cheese, Parmesan, any of the strong smelling. Also, human sweat has quite a bit of the carboxylic acids in it. So if you're sweating, you're producing carboxylic acids, which are going to attract mosquitoes. Another thing is lactic acid. Lactic acid is one of the side products of moving your muscles. So as you move muscles, the sugar is converted into different molecules as it's burnt in your muscles. Lactic acid being one of them. Lactic acid is another dairy type product. When you think lactic or lactose in milk and cheese, some of it is usually converted to lactic acid. This doesn't mean by drink or avoiding dairy products, you're going to avoid the lactic acid and the carboxylic acid. Your body still naturally produces them from other sources. Ammonia. This is another compound both in sweat and in meat and meat products. So producing ammonia is something that's going to attract the mosquitoes. Octanol. Octanol is a really interesting molecule. The human body does produce it, again, usually in our sweat, but what I find fascinating about octanol is the main ingredient for the flavor and scent of your standard culinary mushrooms. So the mushrooms that are on pizza. Moisture. Just an increased humidity in the general area of mammals, especially mammals that are sweating, will attract mosquitoes. Heat. As you're radiating heat, mosquitoes have the ability to sense heat and track that to its source too. And then finally, blue and green light. Many of you probably have switched over the years when you're outdoors, camping and hiking in particular, the LED flashlights that have a, not intentionally, but they have kind of a more blue-white tint to them than the traditional incandescent bulbs that have kind of a more yellow gold color. And so if you are using a bright LED flashlight outside, you may be attracting the mosquitoes. So again, just to recap, basically being a sweaty human is going to attract mosquitoes. And especially in Texas, if you're outside, there's a good chance that you are sweating. Now, different people produce different amounts of these chemicals in their sweat. That's one of the reasons why some people will be just devoured by mosquitoes and a person next to them will be not bit at all. My wife loves/hates the story that whenever we go to check the mailbox at the end of the street during the mosquito season, it's not uncommon for her to have 17 or more bites in the 5 minutes it takes us to walk there and back, where I will not have any. Apparently, for some reason, mosquitoes do not like me. So there's some chemicals here, or something I'm doing, something I'm sweating isn't as attractive to mosquitoes. Now, also keep in mind that each mosquito is different. And if you've taken my class, we've talked about the different chemical receptors on the human tongue and how different people taste different particular compounds in foods. Same sort of thing with mosquitoes. An individual mosquito might have a greater sensitivity or greater targeting ability on lactic acid rather than octanol, or some other combination like that. So what it boils down to is simply when it comes to the plants we are going to talk about and their effectiveness, it's going to depend somewhat on your own personal chemistry and, frankly, the chemistry of the particular mosquitoes, too. So, complicates things. That being said, there is some generalities of the plants that we'll see. They will offer a greater level of protection than others across the board. But when it comes down to you out in the woods, out in the wild, and you're rubbing Queen Anne's lace on you and it's doing nothing for the mosquitoes, it may just be your body chemistry or the mosquitoes themselves that happen to be, that tribe of mosquitoes in that area. But that being said, they will offer some protection above nothing. Any questions at this point?
Nope.
No questions. All right.
Forking mosquitoes.
Forking mosquitoes. Yeah, I don't recommend eating mosquitoes, bloodborne diseases. All right, so let's talk about Deet. Deet is the most common mosquito repellent. Traditionally, in the last 5 years or so, there's been a swell of different molecules coming out on the market. But Deet has been around for, why is that saying that? Okay. Deet has been around for over 40 years, actually more like 50 or 60. Yeah, quite a while. It was actually developed towards the end of World War II, but really didn't see great use until the Vietnam War. Now, Deet is basically diethyl metatoluamide, which is that molecule you're seeing there. The gray are carbons, the white are hydrogens, the blue is a nitrogen, and sorry, we're having some audio difficulties. Okay, we're back. Okay, so
Sorry.
Okay, I forgot to turn the audio off on Merriwether's computer. Okay, back to Deet. So what Deet does, they've tracked this down, and the way they figured it out is kind of Frankensteinish, where they basically took the antenna and the brains from mosquitoes and attached very tiny probes to it and wafted different chemicals and saw, before and after the application of DEET, which triggered the little mosquito brain signals. So what they found is DEET blocks the Octanol receptors in the mosquito. Remember the Octanol, that is the the mushroom flavor and scent, but also a chemical that is produced by mammals. So it blocks the octanol, so it kind of blinds the mosquito inability. It makes the mosquito unable to figure out where you are unless it just kind of randomly bumps into you. But in addition to that, it does also work as a true repellent. There is something about DEET that mosquitoes don't like. And to figure this out, my understanding, I'm not completely sure, I'm still reading the papers, is basically they bred mosquitoes without the DEET receptors. And still they were able, through the secondary things, to still find their target somehow. But when the DEET was present, they still didn't go there. So either the DEET also blinds secondary targeting mechanisms, or the mosquitoes really, really don't like it. The belief is the mosquitoes just don't like it at first, because one thing they have found, and this is kind of a bummer for those of you that use the DEET-based mosquitoes repellents, is a mosquito that is exposed to DEET, the next time it encounters DEET, it's less repelled by it. So they go, yeah, that smells bad, but I'm really hungry. So, I'm going to go and eat you anyway. So it still has all those secondary mechanisms for finding you. And so the DEET, it loses its effectiveness the longer you're out. That being said, a 100% DEET solution applied to like your clothing and stuff has been found to effectively repel the mosquitoes for 12 hours, which is, if you're out there all day working or hunting or hiking or camping, then it's pretty effective. So, and that's at this point pretty much the only thing that's easily commercially available that would go 12 hours. There's a number of things that will go 8 hours, but 12 hours, that's why it's kind of considered the gold standard. Now, of course, there are issues with the DEET. One of the big things is because of its molecular shape there, it's really good at attacking and dissolving plastics, rubbers, synthetic fabric, anything of that nature. I've seen a number of people have ruined different camping gear by spraying their tent with DEET and basically melting it. So that's not a good idea. Really just apply it to yourself and your clothing. It's been determined by the World Health Organization that DEET has minimal health effects based on being used for over 40 years and over 8 billion human subjects using it. In general, especially in areas of mosquito-borne illnesses, the risks of DEET greatly outweigh, the benefits of DEET greatly outweigh the risks. The only real risk they've found is in some people that, like foresters, people that use it every day at huge doses all summer long. They found an uptick in insomnia and irritability. But if you know statistics, correlation is not necessarily causation. These are people that are spending, their months at a time out in the wilderness, harvesting trees, measuring paths, doing all this sort of thing, working hard. So, and there's, lots of things that can come involved in that. So when it comes right down to DEET, as a chemist, looking at the data, I agree with the World Health Organization and other, disease preventative organizations that the risks of DEET are minor compared to that. That being said, I don't like having plastics destroyed. So I'm always on a quest for using things. And also, the less I have to carry in the woods, the better. So let's move on to plants, but first stopping to see if there are questions.
There are a couple.
Oh, good.
So someone said, I thought DEET was a carcinogen. They weren't sure on that.
Okay, so DEET as a carcinogen. No, there is no statistical proof that it leads to cancer. There is a lot of really fake science stuff out there, especially about chemicals and how chemicals are bad for you. And lots of people trying to convince you that all these chemicals are bad. But I have not been able to find anything that shows a plausible connection between DEET and cancer. What else?
All right. Someone said, I found that rubbing dryer sheets on your skin and keeping them on your body repels mosquitoes while hiking and camping. Why is that, and have you heard of it before?
Okay, I have heard of that. I don't know exactly why it works. A big part of that is that from just a scientific wild ass guess, is a lot of the dryer sheets contain different fragrances, artificial fragrances in there. And there might be some that either interfere with or repel the mosquitoes. That's the best I can come up with as far as the dryer sheets. But yes, I've heard that. I haven't tried it personally. And frankly, dryer sheets are kind of expensive. So anything else?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. All right, so that's DEET. Very effective, good to have an emergency, good for long term, but it has its issues, especially from materials. So moving on, let's talk about wild plants. There are a number of plants, and probably the best one you will find, especially in the state of Texas, is the American Beautyberry. So in this case, you want the leaves. You want to crush them because the chemicals are inside the cell walls. So if you just take the leaves and wave them around in the air, the chemical is going to come out. You need to really crush and chop and mash, the leaves up to rupture the cell walls to release the chemicals. So crushed leaves, also used as a smudge or smoke. So if you have a campfire, you can throw some of the green leaves on the fire and increase the smoke, and there will be the repellent compounds in there. You can also dry the leaves and roll them into like a smudge bundle, almost like a Native American medicine bundle smudge sort of thing. Imagine like a big cigar, basically. Now there are 3 chemicals in the American Beautyberry, and I'm not going to go into the chemistry here, but probably in the comments I'll throw them up there. But they've been scientifically proven to be as good as DEET, D-E-E-T, the thing we talked about, up to about 8 hours. So you may not get the whole 12-hour effect from one application, but it will still work. And what I recommend, especially if you're in an area of American beautyberries where you can harvest the leaves, usually they're so plentiful that it's easy to reload yourself. Now, important thing to know about the compounds of the American beautyberry, the mosquito repellent compounds, is the human toxicity testing of them has not been finished. It is currently undergoing the human toxicity testing, a joint project between the University of Missouri and the U.S. Army. So what I recommend with the American beautyberry is you crush the leaves and rub them on your clothing, maybe put some in your hat band, in your shoes, between your shoes and socks. Don't let them necessarily be directly in contact with your skin. Just because at this point there's still a lot of unknowns about the molecules, other than yes, they are effective at repelling mosquitoes and wood ticks. But as far as any bad effects on the humans, that's still to be figured out. Now, where do you find it? If you are not familiar with American beautyberry, this is a woodland bush. It likes to grow in amongst the deep woods, especially East Texas, Central Texas, the Gulf Coast region. Really, anywhere where you have a lot of woods, you're very likely to find this particular bush. It is deciduous, which means it does lose its leaves in the fall. They start showing up really at the beginning of March, at least like in the Sam Houston National Forest and areas like that. So they start appearing just before mosquito season really starts blossoming. So that's good. So you can start gathering it and have it ready. One thing I don't have on the slides here, but I've been experimenting some with the American Beautyberry and taking the dried leaves and soaking them in your basic like tiki torch mosquito repellent torch fuel. If we get to it, I'll explain that the citronella torches, really the citronella in it doesn't do anything for mosquitoes. The molecules from this are actually very soluble in the torch fuel and should be good at keeping the mosquitoes away. So if you want to make your own tiki torch fuel, you can just get like the unscented tiki torch fuel and crush up or add dried crushed American Beautyberry leaves to it and let them soak 6 to 8 weeks. And so the three molecules can diffuse into the oil because they are pretty soluble in that. Those particular molecules are not very soluble, really not soluble at all in water or any ethanol. From vodka to Everclear, they really are big fatty molecules. So they need big fatty solvent molecules. So water and ethanol and isopropanol, things like that, don't work. So converting this into some sort of easy to apply bug spray is kind of tough, but crushing up the leaves does. Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, we got questions, so let's go to Merriwether.
Can you put the beautyberry leaves in alcohol to make a homemade spray repellent? Basically like a spray tincture. I'm not sure you'd want to put alcohol on your skin.
Yeah, well,
but...
okay, let me go back. Okay, so yeah, I guess that question maybe came up before I answered that, but
yeah, it did.
yeah, no, it doesn't work. The ethanol will not dissolve, not extract the chemicals you want. So, bummer there. Now, if you go to the hardware store and buy a bottle of xylene in the paint section, that will work, but you don't want to spray xylene on you because it's kind of toxic. Okay, any other questions? The camera's on you.
Mr. Jim Vorderbruggen asks, will it kill Minnesota mosquitoes?
First off, hi, Dad. Okay, that's my dad. Secondly, well, unfortunately, Dad, this plant doesn't grow up there. Later on, we'll see some that do, but yes, it should work. So this tells me I need to bring some up to you when we come up to visit you next time. So what could possibly go wrong driving across the country with bags of dried plant material? All right, any other questions? Ah, yes.
Can olive oil be used for the spray?
Okay, so olive oil. Borderline. You can try it, but the lamp oil is going to be closer than the olive oil molecules. Olive oil would definitely work better than ethanol. This is one that would require some testing. So I would say go for it and report back to everyone else. And more?
What about picaridin versus Deet?
Okay, picaridin. Whoops, actually, let me go to this one. Picaridin, I did not include it tonight because picaridin is a synthetic molecule. It's not from any plant material. That being said, it is very effective. It's actually a mosquito killer. Mosquitoes and insects that come in contact with it usually die. That being said, up until recently, and even then I'm not positive, but all the insect repellents I've seen that have included that particular chemical have big warnings not to get it on your skin, just to treat your clothing, your camping gear. It does not dissolve synthetic fabrics or synthetic materials. It is very effective, but it's more of a mosquito killer. That's actually something I spray on my socks and my pants and my hammock on the side that I'm not, laying in, to just, kill any mosquitoes that try and come after me or wood ticks that try and come after me. But from a toxicity point of view, that's actually a bit more toxic, actually kind of significantly more toxic than DEET as far as the danger is. So at this point, I'm still, until I see some more data, and I have to look it up some, but my understanding of the Picardian is you don't want it on your skin, you don't want to consume it, you don't want it on your hands while you're eating. You just want it on clothing and tents and sleeping bags, things like that. Things that aren't going to come in contact with skin or mouth or eyes or get into the body. Okay, anything else?
Last one. Is avocado or coconut oil more fatty?
Whoops. Okay, avocado or coconut oil? Coconut oil is definitely fatty. I'm not sure about avocado oil. I have not looked into the fat content. If I remember correctly, the avocados do have a fair amount of omega-3 fatty acids, but I'm not sure. And actually, the fattiness is not something you want. What you want are just big, long chain hydrocarbons with not a lot of other shrubbery on them. Some aromatic rings help too, but usually people want to avoid aromatic rings. Okay, is that it?
I believe so.
Okay, so done with American Beautyberry. Moving on to the next. Another good one is artist conch mushrooms. These are those shelf mushrooms you find on dead trees and dying trees all across North America. So it's again Ganoderma apletantum. I hate scientific names. So, like I said, this is the big shelf-like mushroom that you see on trees, dead trees. It is used as a smudge or smoke. Traditionally, the nice thing about these, if you're familiar with those like mosquito coils, those green things where you light and they just kind of burn around for several hours, that's kind of what these mushrooms do. And that you start it smoldering, and it will, when they're dry, so you want a dead dry one, and a big one will smolder for hours, and there is something in the smoke. So the smoke itself, smoke in general is a mosquito repellent, but there's something in the artist conch mushrooms that also helps drive mosquitoes away. Now what's interesting about this is if you get a fresh artist conch mushroom, it definitely has that mushroomy smell, that octanol smell, so you would think it would attract mosquitoes. But once the mushroom is dead, a lot of that odor goes away and new odors appear. Not unpleasant, just not mushroom odor, and that seems to help keep the mosquitoes away. That being said, it has a long use traditionally, and even in my personal experience, I've used it on a number of occasions to help keep mosquitoes out of my lean-to and areas where it's pretty much open to mosquito-ness. But I wasn't able to find any true scientific papers that go in depth and have actually looked at the chemistry involved or any good measurement of the efficacy. Usually it's listed amongst a bunch of plants on the different scientific papers, and then they focus on something else other than the mushroom. So the artist conch mushroom, personal experience, it works better than just plain smoke. Scientifically, the jury is still way out on that, just because, like I said, I haven't found any sort of real good tests on it. To identify this molecule, or sorry, this mushroom, like I said, it is the big shelf gray kind of circular mushroom found on dead and dying trees. It is a polypore, which means on the underside, instead of gills, it'll have lots of little holes. And like I said, you want the ones that are already dead and drying. The underside, when they're fresh, it's going to be white, and the mushroom will have a rubbery sort of flexibility to it. You want the ones that are kind of gray, the underside is gone off-white, no longer a pure clean white, but more of like an eggshell or dark eggshell, dark tan, and very stiff and hard. If they're starting to crumble and turn to powder and are rotted, those aren't going to work either. So you want it dead, but not really, really dead, just mostly dead. Okay, so artist conch mushroom found all across North America. It's probably one of your better choices in the wild, at least all across North America for people outside of Texas watching tonight. Question?
I got a question.
All right, got a question.
You mentioned the old green coils. These work very well for me, but I've been told they burn carcinogenic smoke that causes lung damage. Any thoughts?
Okay, on that, yeah, the chemicals that they use in those particular coils are not good for you. They're really best. You don't want to breathe them, and also you obviously you don't want to breathe the smoke particulates, just because they can be carrying the compounds, you know, the little molecules. It's recommended really that they are set kind of in a border around where the people are to keep the mosquitoes out, and then where the people are, don't have them right amongst the people. So yeah, there is concern about the chemistry in them. That's one of the reasons they become very hard to find. I had to search quite a bit to find, even just information on them. Anything else?
One person says that when you were talking about picaridin, they think you might have been talking about permethrin instead.
Okay. So the permethrin is from chrysanthemums. The picaridin, though, again, looking at the data on that when I was preparing for this, I did find a lot of information on it. I'm sorry, I'm picking out a scab here. Found a lot of information that made me kind of cautious about it. So yeah, there is also permethrin, permethrin, which is extracted from chrysanthemums, but then that is another insecticide. It is not a repellent. It doesn't necessarily repel the insects. It just kills them on contact. So that being said, remember, don't trust just one source. Always double check. And if you find something different, please post it, because I want to learn too. Seriously. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, back to the... Ooh. Actually, let's just take one moment again, because we're already halfway in. I think this one is going to go several weeks, but just another shout out to Uncommon Bees, my bee, honey, wax, propolis supplier, all things. They have a huge assortment. They have cosmetics. Bring up the cosmetics. They have CBD oil. So if you're familiar with the CBD hemp oil and its medicinal benefits, they have a number of different infused types of honey and lip balms and soap and all sorts of things. So if you are looking for a good source of the CBD, these people can set you up. All right, so next up we have cedar, the juniper genus. So cedar and juniper are... Why are you doing that? Sorry. So cedar and juniper are basically the same plant family, the same genus. Some people call them cedar, some people call them juniper. The crushed leaves will help repel mosquitoes, and also if the leaves are smudged or smoked, put out as not like smoked, but smoke from the cedar will help keep mosquitoes away. Same with the wood. There is a cedar oil that is somewhat repellent. Like I said here, science kind of says, meh, it works, but it doesn't work for very long or very effectively. But in a crucial situation, if you don't have anything else, the cedar is well, alphabetically, it's third in line. I should point out that these plants are showing up alphabetically, not due to any sort of effectiveness, other than American Beautyberry starts with an A and is probably the most effective. But any of the cedars, the wood and the crushed leaves have some minor mosquito repellent ability, and I have a scientific link there, don't I?
Yep.
Okay, good. So Merriwether is putting up the scientific link so you can see what I'm talking about. But it's really a short-term sort of effectiveness, at least a single dose. Now, if you're constantly reapplying it, you'll get more use out of it, but generally a single application is only good for less than an hour. So if you're just going to run out and do something and come back in, then okay, fine. But if you're out there all day long, cedar, unless you're constantly re-crushing new plants and reapplying it, not so good. I keep moving my cursor around. Now, dog fennel. I posted, if you follow me on Instagram, this is something I posted last week. This is a common weed. It's just starting to show up now. A lot of people mistake it for some sort of wild fennel. It's not wild fennel. It's actually toxic if consumed. But the crushed leaves, according to science, and we'll put up the scientific article there, science says yes, this actually has some mosquito repellency. Now, like I said, the dog fennel, it does have some toxicity. There are compounds in it, piazolines, basically nitrogen with the carbon ring attached to it, that when it hits the liver can damage the liver. So this is another one of those plants that's really recommended that you apply to your clothing. Do not apply directly to skin. You probably want to wear some gloves or something when you're crushing it up, because you do want to crush up the leaves to get that out there and just kind of stick them around. Or once you make camp for the evening, you can crush up the leaves and set them around you to help keep the mosquitoes away. So look for the dog fennel, and this is a close-up picture there. It really does look like fennel, but if you pull it up, it has a taproot rather than a bulb. Look for it in disturbed areas and fields. It seems to really like full sun. It likes soil that's been churned up, like construction areas, abandoned areas, roadsides, areas that kind of need a little TLC from nature. There's something about dog fennel that it really likes that sort of area and offers some healing ability to the soil itself. Starts showing up in spring. Right now, a lot of them might be, you can't see it, maybe 18 inches tall already, basically from like 5 inches to 18 inches tall. It can get 5-6 feet tall by late summer, but start looking for it in February-ish. Making a spray from this, if I remember the scientific paper correctly, they used a methyl acetate chemical to extract the particular compounds. In this case, this is where ethanol, like Everclear or even a high-strength vodka, like 100 or 90 to 100 proof vodka, would do a fairly decent job of extracting those molecules, and then you can spray it on your clothing. But again, the main thing is you don't want to consume the plant. So just on your clothing, not on your hands, especially if you're going to eat, just to be safe. Any questions?
Not so far.
All right. Whoops. I always do that. All right. Another one is a pineapple weed. Hey, Dad, this one's all over Minnesota. It's also found in Texas, not quite as abundant as it is up in Minnesota. Usually it's going to be up in the northern areas of Texas, like above Dallas, but I have seen and heard reports of it other areas, again, kind of in the northern section of Texas. So it actually has a really, really nice smell to it. It has kind of a pineapple chamomile sort of smell to it. And the crushed leaves also smell really good. It's used as just a drinking tea quite a bit because it has such a pleasant flavor. But it has been scientifically proven as, it was traditionally used as an insect repellent, and science says, yeah, it has some repellency. Like I said, this is one of the ones that actually smells really good, and it's safe to rub on your skin. There are no known harmful compounds, and since the plant is used for millennia as a tea plant, there should be no issues rubbing it on your skin. So this is a common weed. You'll find it in disturbed areas, in yards, open areas, not in the woods, not in shady, wet areas. It seems to like drier areas. It'll be growing up in the middle of a dirt road. That's what I'm talking when I'm talking, disturbed areas, just bare soil, tore up soil. It's a springtime plant down here, so it starts showing up beginning of March and is usually gone by mid-May, based on different reports and information I've been able to track down on it in Texas. Other parts, the farther north you go, the more summertime plant it becomes. Like if any of my Minnesota friends are there watching other than Dad, usually June, July, August are great times to collect the pineapple weed. You might even find some in May, really young, but more the midsummer. But in Texas, especially in northern Texas, it's going to be a springtime. So February through April, and then away it goes. As far as the molecules, not a lot of data on that other than there's something in it that repels mosquitoes. But to my knowledge, they haven't tracked down the specific molecules. And so I cannot recommend a particular solvent for doing it. So go ahead and try ethanol and see what happens if you have access to pineapple weed. One of my plans when I'm up in Minnesota is to collect some and try different solvents to try and figure out what would work best. All right, any questions?
So far, nope.
All right. Next up, Queen Anne's lace, aka wild carrot. So the wild carrot, the crushed leaves have been scientifically proven to have some insect repellency. Oh, Dad, actually I learned about this one a long time ago, and you don't even realize, growing up when I used to take our dog Fritz out in the woods and there were a problem with mosquitoes, I'd rub both the dog and me down with the Queen Anne's lace because it grows all in that field out through the woods behind our house. So even scientifically proven, I have firsthand experience with Queen Anne's lace working for me, the crushed leaves rubbed on me and my dog, to help keep mosquitoes away. So I like this one. Now, the thing to keep in mind, so where are the wild carrots found? These again prefer, here in Texas, well, everywhere, they prefer sunny fields, ditches, disturbed areas. So areas that actually get a lot of human traffic. This is not a native plant. It came from Europe, and it's just kind of hangs out with humans, and we have a tendency to spread it all over the place. Here in Texas, this is a springtime summer plant. I started seeing it appear late March, but now it will go through most of the summer. By mid-September, it's really going to be shutting down, but most of the summer it's going to be around, and so it's a kind of a valuable insect repellent. If you remember last week when we talked about harvesting laws, and I said one of the safest, from a legal point of view, place to harvest plant are along Texas roadsides, because even the Texas has announced that yes, you are allowed to harvest plants. You're not allowed to dig up plants, but you are allowed to harvest flowers and plant parts from Texas roadsides and ditches. So the Queen Anne's lace is all over. Those of you up in the Tyler, Palestine area, it is loaded with wild carrot up there. The ditches are just absolutely loaded with this, white flower. Go to the Foraging Texas website to see more pictures of it, but I wanted to give some individuals here. But that area is loaded with wild carrots. Even around the Woodland Spring area, it's all over here. It's a very, very common plant. Up in Minnesota, up north, it's a summertime plant there too. It just starts showing up. It may just be starting to show up now. No, it's still too cold up in Minnesota. But by mid-May, after Mother's Day, it might start showing up, but it's going to be around all summer. Now, the thing to remember is you want to make sure you have Queen Anne's lace and not the poisonous hemlock, because you do not want to rub your body with a poisonous plant. I got a picture here. The main identifying characteristics between the Queen Anne's lace, aka wild carrot, and the poison hemlock. First, on the flower, So on the upper left-hand side, one of the key things is on the underside of the flower cluster, there will be this green ring of what look like leaves, but stringy sepals. Whereas the underside of the wild hemlock will just be stem. It won't have that green kind of narrow Kermit the Frog collar on it. The stems of the wild carrot, it's going to be more green and it'll have little bristly hairs. I tell people Queen Anne has hairy legs. If you imagine, stubble, that's what the stem of the Queen Anne's lace will feel like 3-day-old stubble, depending on how much stubble you have after 3 days. Whereas the poison hemlock will be smooth, very little stubble to no stubble. The hemlock may also be purple or splotches of purple, but the smoothness is what you're looking for on the stem. The purple isn't always there. And of course, one of the best ways of telling is if you can pull it up and cut the root the long way, you will see the poison hemlock root. It will have chambers. If you imagine cutting a piece of bamboo lengthwise, and you'll have openings and then kind of closed areas and then openings again. So multiple chambers along the length of the root. That's what poison hemlock does, where Queen Anne's lace, being a carrot, it's solid all the way through. So make sure you have Queen Anne's lace and not the hemlock. This is especially important because both are found in ditches, often right next to each other or very, very close. The hemlock prefers a bit more wetness. So the hemlock will also be in the base of the ditch, and then the wild carrot will be up along the edges of the ditch. So you can use location as a way to help you figure it out too. Definitely go to the Foraging Texas website and look closer. Wow, 8:49. Okay, we'll go a little more. I think we'll go one more because I do have important words of wisdom tonight. And so I want to make sure we get that in too. Okay, another one that has a lot of traditional use, and I hear a lot of people comment about using it, and other people saying they've tried it, it doesn't work at all. It all boils down to body chemistry and the mosquitoes. But southern wax myrtle, aka wax myrtle, aka southern bayberry, aka bayberry. So this is a native coastal area plant, but it's coastal in East Texas. It's an understory plant. Well, we'll talk about where you find it. But traditionally, the leaves were crushed and then either rubbed on the skin. This is a food plant. You can eat this plant, so there's no issues rubbing the crushed leaves on your skin. Like I said, it has a long history of traditionally being used as mosquito repellent. On me personally, I've not found it to work. Some people swear by it, other people swear at it, to steal a cliche. But scientifically, there hasn't been any real research that I was able to find on its effectiveness. So I think this is one that's really dependent on the person's chemistry and also just how well you crush it up. How well you smash it up, crush it up to really rupture the cell walls and rub it on you. So as common as this plant is, your mileage may vary whether it actually protects you or not. Now, this is a small multi-trunked tree. You'll find it in understories in woods, so it doesn't normally like growing out in the sun. Given its preference, it would grow low amongst other trees. It's very common up in the Sam Houston National Forest. I'm trying to remember if I've seen it up in Davy Crockett National Forest. I want to say yes. But very common in East Texas and also along the Gulf Coast. This is also used in landscaping a lot. It can be pruned into all sorts of shapes. So it is used a lot to make privacy fences or also just hedges. Where I used to work, Baker Hughes, the facility, the campus, the walkways were lined with the southern wax myrtle trimmed into waist-high shrub barrier type things. This plant does not lose its leaves, so it is an evergreen. It's not a pine tree, but it always has its leaves. So that's kind of handy. So if you're in a warm snap in January and suddenly mosquitoes are out, and you have permission, so give the southern waxleaf myrtles a try. They may work for you. What I really recommend, a lot of these plants are pretty easy to find in your neighborhood, so it may be worth just testing them on yourself, crushing them up, going outside on your patio, and seeing what happens. Does it work for you or does it not? Before you get out into the woods, because like I said, a lot of it boils down to body chemistry. Okay, any questions?
A couple.
Oh, good.
Is the wax myrtle native?
Yes, the southern wax myrtle is a native plant, so its use as an insect repellent even goes back to the Native Americans before the arrival of Western people. So it is definitely native, and it's often for sale in nurseries. This is a plant that's easy to obtain to put in your yard. Any other?
One more. Is the wax myrtle related to the crepe myrtle?
No, the wax myrtle and crepe myrtle are completely unrelated. To my knowledge, there is no mosquito repellency in the crepe myrtles. They just happen to share the same name. I don't know why. If maybe the crepe myrtle might have been named after the southern wax myrtle, because the crepe myrtles are not native. But as far as why they have the same name, I don't have any clue. All right, anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
You're catching me in bad positions.
Yeah, that's what dads do. One of the great joys of parenthood is embarrassing their kids.
Love you too.
Love you. Okay, so we're going to stop here on the presentation because, like I said, it was very important that I get in these words of wisdom tonight. Hey, here, okay, let's do this. Because she actually plays a big role in this.
Oh, I do?
Yeah, you do.
Wow.
So I mentioned, I can't see anything without my glasses. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is episode 26. We've been doing this for half a year. So here's something, a bit of advice. Whenever you've doing something, investing your time, energy, money into it, it is always really important to assess it. And usually twice a year, so like every 6 months, it's good to look at the your investment and decide, is this doing what I was hope it's doing? So is the return on investment worth it? And also, are the opportunity costs, the cost, by doing, you spending your money on one thing, you don't have it available for something else. So like I said, we've been doing Merriwether's World here for actually technically over a year, but at 26 months or 26 episodes, that's half a year. So it's time to reassess this. And I've decided changes have to be made. I'm actually spending far, far too much of my time preparing for these classes. And this was brought home Monday night when Merriwether asked me, hey, Dad, can we go for a walk tonight? Because one of our great joys in life is just going out for a walk in the dark at night. Because, the walk during the day involves blindfolds and hitting cars. My response when she asked, could we go for a walk tonight, was, no, I got to prepare for Wednesday's show. And as soon as I said that, her face dropped and my heart just went, and it's like, okay, just hand me the bad dad award. So, changes need to be made. I love the show. I love you guys. I love doing this. But I can't spend as much time as I spend preparing for the show. It's taking up too much time for my family, and the opportunity costs of other things I could be doing besides going for walks with my families and watching TV with my wife and playing cards and dominoes and things like that. Where was I going with this? Oh, so obviously I'm going to try and keep Merriwether's World going. Like I said, there's going to be changes. We will continue this. So next week we will, because the presentation's already made, I don't have to sacrifice any time for that. We'll continue there. And then after that, Most of the shows will be a little more free form. I already have in my mind, I know the show after this will be how I use the internet to identify unusual or unknown plants. So I'll go to show you different websites and things like that. Tricks I've developed over the years for identifying plants, because that's one of the other things is I spend a lot of time identifying plants for people. So long story short, Merriwether's World will continue. It's going to be somewhat different. Not next week, but the week after. It may also be shorter. I don't know if I can go a complete hour. It depends on questions and so forth. But I'm finding, as much as I love it and answering and spreading the word, I mean, I'm passionate about this stuff. But I have family, and they're, I'm told, really cool. So I want to try and find out for myself. So, like I said, things are going to change. A long time ago, one of my words of wisdom was the only real money you have are the seconds, the minutes of your life, because that's the most valuable thing you have. And everything else is based on how many of those seconds and minutes you've sacrificed to, get a particular object or accomplish a particular goal. And I need to make some, changes. What am I saying? She's a teenager. I'm not going to have her around much longer. The other one is she's a little annoyed. Okay, she's not here right now. Don't tell her I said that. So Merriwether's World will continue in some form, but there are going to be changes. I just want you all to be aware of that. Other than that, anything else going on?
Not so far.
Okay.
People like the idea of Q&A sessions.
All right. Good.
So.
Good. Because that will, give me my life back. All right, 8:59. You've been with me an hour. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending your seconds, your minutes with us. Like I said, I love doing this. If I wasn't working 60 hours a week at my real job, I'd have more time for this. But as it is, changes are going to be made. Like I said, do that in your own life. Every 6 months, reassess. And what I doing in my life, is it making my life better or is it making it worse? So, it's not just the, stocks and bonds or whatever, everything you do. Okay. That being said, I love you all. Fork and weeds. Yeah, I love you all. And good night.